Okay, I am Fritz Springmeier, and this is the fourth segment of a series of talks here at the Great Lutheran Hall, October 9th, 2016. And for this fourth talk, we are going to discuss the hidden past and the hidden present. And like I said in an earlier presentation, because there's so much on these subjects, I am just trying to throw a spotlight on some important things, and then I would hope that you would then be able to buy books or also look at YouTube videos that you could learn more about these interesting subjects. So on the hidden past, we're going to discuss hidden archaeological discoveries, the hidden hand in history, and the crimes of the elite. Again, we're going to only scratch the surface of these fascinating subjects. And then we're going to look at the hidden present, corruption, cures, technology, spiritual and educational tools. So all over the world, strange artifacts have been found in mines, lumps of coal, rocks, and here you see a couple of them. And what they suggest, or what they prove, I guess you could put it more strongly that way, is the version of history that we have been given has to be bogus. And so I have given a couple of the books that you could follow up and read some more on. All over the world, bones of giants have been found. Here you see some pictures of them. You can see in a couple of these pictures how big the giants are compared to the people beside them. And then one of the Dead Sea Scrolls was the Book of Giants. So this is something that's gone on for a long time. There's some books like The Watchers, Nephilim. And then this book over on the right-hand side is a book that exposes how the Smithsonian Institute has covered up and destroyed the giant bones that were sent to it. This one's a subject that's fascinated me a lot, and I have gotten to speak with some of the people that have gone out in the field and found things. The pigraphers, those are people that study stone inscriptions and monuments. And the person that's the most expert, at least as far as writing about it, is Barry Fell. And America, BC is such a good book that now some of the universities are using it as a textbook. But he goes in and he documents how across North America you find Phoenician artifacts and temples, you find Egyptian artifacts, you find the Viking artifacts, and so here you see this little gold medallion that was found in the Grand Canyon from Egypt, obviously from Egypt. Over here you have an inscription that was found in Iowa that's got Hebrew and Phoenician writing. It's multilingual. And then you've got Viking coins, you've got the Vikings left rune stones throughout North America as they explored it. Now, up to now, the only thing that they've really seriously acknowledged is they found at Monsall Meadows at the north end of Newfoundland, they uncovered a Viking village. But we know from the Viking sagas, they explored much more than Newfoundland. They explored inland. And interestingly, I have met members from tribes from the eastern coast of America. One of these, he was a member of a very small tribe from the New England area, and he was full-blooded Indian. He was my track coach, and honestly, that man looked more like he had Celtic blood than anything else. And in fact, maybe you are aware of the Micmac tribe. When the missionaries came to the Micmac tribe there in New England, they were taking bark and they were writing on it. And the missionaries wrote down in their books the inscriptions, that the language that the Micmac tribe was writing. But nobody understood what they were looking at the time. And in recent years, people like Barry Fells realized this was Egyptian hieratic. Perhaps you know that in their monuments, their formal writing was hieroglyphics, but their handwriting cursive was hieratic. And then their shorthand was Demotic. And so this Indian tribe was writing with a form of ancient Egyptian writing. All over the world is evidence of that the establishment narrative is bogus. We have caves, and the authenticity of this ancient art is indisputable. There you see an alien with a flying saucer. You see an alien on the Egyptian art, ancient cave art with a jet. Over here, some more art of aliens. And we are not getting the full story on any of this. And I'm fully convinced that, the insiders that whisper things that say, I was in the military and so forth, and our military is collaborating with these aliens. I have a hard time not believing that there isn't something there with so many witnesses having sincerely, or at least they came across as sincerely talking to me. And what was a little bit unnerving, a little bit maybe, was because you realize the level of research I have here. And Cisco, she was in the Illuminati program with the trauma-based mind control. Her son was in the military, and he guarded one of these installations in New Mexico. And he knew that his life would be in danger if he told me about what went on, but he was willing to, and I don't think I'm going to get him in trouble at this point. I haven't really mentioned his name. I've never mentioned his name before, but he said, Fritz, what they're doing underground there is way beyond anything you're talking about. Wow. Okay. We've got underwater cities with pyramids all over the world. Here's an underwater city that's to the west of the Japanese southern islands. We've got two underwater cities off of India. We've got this underwater city off of the west coast of Cuba, and one underwater city in China. And it's obvious that these cities date back to at least like 10,000 years. Now, at one time, the Yucatan Peninsula stretched over to Cuba. And so in that part of the water, the Caribbean, between Cuba and Yucatan Peninsula is where the Cuban city is. And again, the point of all of this is this is evidence, it's clear evidence that the establishment narrative is totally bogus. So my question is why are there large ancient pyramids all over the earth? And then if we look at some of the ancient records, it seems to indicate that there's a connection between those fallen angels or archons or whatever, the Nephilim, and these pyramids too. Now this is a very interesting thing. And mentioning this particular aspect, I thought that the interesting thing about this particular point in history is to show you, those of you who may aspire to be researchers like me, how you can tell a clue, okay? Now this event in history it's the lost Roanoke Island colony. The first English colony, as you can see there, they came in 1585. There was a group of settlers and they settled on Roanoke Island. And then the colony disappeared. So that later, when ships from England came, they couldn't find the colony. It was called the Lost Colony. And all they could find is this clue, Croton, carved on a street, on a tree. Okay, in the story, basically, as far as the establishment narrative that we've been told. My research shows that Virginia Dare, who was the first child born in the New World, was of one of these elite, I guess, what would now be called an Illuminati bloodline. So here's the clue that there's something really strange about Virginia Dare that's out of the ordinary. There are all kinds of companies named after her. There's statues. I mean, here's a wine that's named after her. They made a postage stamp out of Virginia Dare. Now, what is Virginia Dare's claim to fame? Nothing, except she was the first child born in America that was English. I mean, at least recorded. I mean, there were Spanish children and so forth. So it's not like it was the first white child, but the first English child born in the New World. Okay, that's a little bit special, but not that special, right? Not that special that they would make a stamp of her, and they would make all of the, I'm just giving you a little sampling of how much is made, how much to-do is made about Virginia Dare. And that's a clue. There's something more here than, this is out of the ordinary. There's something more here. There's something to this. I'll give you another example right off the top of my head of something that shows a clue. Okay, in the American Revolution, they created something called the Order of Cincinnati, based on a Roman military character called Cincinnatus. And it was kind of quasi-secret society for officers and everything. Okay, that's the American Revolution. Okay. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the American Revolution. I'm talking about something that started in 1775 and went to 1783, right? That time period. Do you know that there is still an order of the Cincinnati today? And if you look them up in the books, they say, oh, we are an organization of descendants from the original Order of Cincinnati. Huh? Why would anyone want to bother with something like that? It makes no sense. Why would people be putting so much effort and well, from my Illuminati informants, I came to realize it's an Illuminati organization. It's a front. It has an ulterior purpose. So they just give it this, okay, we're descendants. Like they still have, you know, some of these other organizations, descendants of some ancient thing. And you go, why would anyone still be putting effort into something like this? Who would care? And all the amount of money and effort, it's because there's something else to it, okay? So, why was the first English child born in America given so much attention? As I say there. Here's another thing hidden from history. This follows the general theme of, if we go around the world, and study the history textbooks that are given in the schools, and I have read the parts of textbooks of quite a few countries, what they're teaching in the schools. If you were to go to today and go to Hiroshima, some people pronounce it. If you were to go there and ask the school children what special happened here in World War II, they don't have a clue. They do not teach that an atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Huh? Because it's shameful. It's part of history they don't want to remember. So, whenever you go around the world, whether it's Russia, France, Japan, if there's some history that's rather embarrassing, there's a good chance that it's been eliminated from the standard history book, and the people are unaware of it. The American Civil War, the fundamental issue in that war, although there were many levels to look at it and many levels to understand it, including the Illuminati wanted to balkanize America into two different countries. So there was that level, but on one level, it was about slavery. The black people were slaves, and the South lost the war. And so the head of one of the top Freemasons in the world, Albert Pike, along with Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a Confederate general, they formed a guerrilla organization that was based on a Scottish secret society and the Horsemen, and they began waging a guerrilla war against the occupation army of the U.S. Army was an army of occupation that garrisoned the South. Well, you have to understand, like so much in history, a country that wins a war eventually gets tired of garrisoning troops in the country that they conquered. United States has pulled back most of its troops from Germany and Japan. And the United States got tired of garrisoning troops in the South. And sometimes the troops had to intervene to protect the blacks, but eventually they just got tired of it all. And so they made a secret agreement with the South, and it was like they both both gave each other something. And they basically let the whites in the South take control again over the South. So the Confederates, with a guerrilla war that was a secret war, secretly won it. That's not something that's talked about in the history books. There's a hidden hand of history, and I would recommend that anyone who can read English get Ralph Epperson's The Unseen Hand. That's an excellent book. Along with that book, I recommend Bloodlines of the Illuminati, which is my book. If you read those two books, you'll have a solid foundation, and you will realize how these people have manipulated historical events. History has not been random. Just an example of the kind of thing that the Unseen Hand will document for you is how World War I was created by the secret societies. Another thing that the Hidden Hand has done is created epidemics. And if you start tracking back to the influenza epidemic that hit the world after World War I, you'll see it goes back to the Fort Riley, that was just north of where I graduated from high school. The original outbreak began there, and then it spread to other military bases by the military men being reassigned, and then it went globally in 2 waves from there. Likewise, the swine flu began at Fort Dix, New Jersey. So there's a whole hidden history of the bio war that these people have been involved with. And right now, the warfare is being conducted against the people of the world. Another interesting aspect of the hidden hand of hidden history is the large history of how British aristocracy, the bankers in America, and the Illuminati kingpins helped Hitler before and during the war. And some of you who have listened to previous talks that I have given, I've talked about the diamonds. Diamonds are used in gyroscopes. What are gyroscopes used in? Gyroscopes are used in tanks, gyroscopes are used in planes, submarines, and gyroscopes use diamonds. Diamonds are used industrially in many different ways. For a modern industry, there's a great need for diamonds. So when the United States, after Pearl Harbor, joined the side of the Allies and went to war in World War II, their immediate need was 9 million carats of diamonds. And so they asked the Jewish diamond industry, they asked them for 9 million carats of diamonds. Now understand, they were also supplying the Nazis with the diamonds. How do you think the Nazi modern war industry was able to operate? They were receiving these diamonds that came from the Belgian Congo. And surprisingly, the British diamonds, the people that were sitting on diamonds in Britain, they didn't want to supply the United States with the industrial diamonds that the United States needed. I guess maybe they thought, well, if we supplied 9 million carats all at once, people will realize that diamonds aren't rare. For whatever reason, they turned the U.S. government down. The U.S. government used the highest form of blackmail or leverage that they could. They said, if you do not supply these diamonds, we are quitting the war. It's just that simple. You're going to supply them or we're dropping out. But Rockefeller tankers were supplying oil that went to Spain and were pumped into the Axis countries. The Bush family during the war were actually making profits off of Auschwitz, and then they made enough money that was what allowed the Bush family to get into politics. The Bush family is part of a secret society based at Yale called the Order of the Skull and Bones, and there was a group of students that didn't like the secrecy of this secret society, the Order of Skull and Bones. They broke into it back in the 19th century, and they went into the different rooms, and they had stuff written on the walls in German, which they wrote down what it was, but they couldn't identify it. Well, as most people are not informed, they didn't realize what they had written down. I looked at what they had written down, and there's another book written by John Robeson, who was a high-ranking Freemason who exposed how the Illuminati was coming into all the Masonic lodges and Illuminizing them. This was back about 1787 that he wrote this. And he gave the rituals. And this ritual that they had in the lodge there in the Order of the Skull and Bones tomb at Yale matches this Bavarian Illuminati ritual. In other words, we have conclusive proof that the Order of Skull and Bones is a branch of the Bavarian Illuminati, and my further research confirms that the Bavarian Illuminati was a branch of the mainstream Illuminati, these families. So I can confirm to you that all the members of this Order of the Skull and Bones are Illuminati, and they have a lot of power in American politics. They're just one of the secret branches of college fraternities. There's many others. At Yale, there's 4 others: Book and Snake, Berzelius, Key and Scroll. Anyway, this book here, Fleshing Out Skull and Bones, written by a friend of mine and co-authored by a few other people. It's very good for exposing the Order of the Skull and Bones. And Onassis down here, his ships flew the Greek flag during World War II. They flew in his ships sailed in, he had 300 and some, speaking off the top of my head, something like 300 ships, and his ships sailed in all the theaters. They traded with both sides. They were never once attacked. All the other Greek merchant ship was sunk. All the other owners of ships had their ships sunk. But it took collaboration at the highest level to keep his ships safe. So the Illuminati kingpins made large, vast sums of money off of World War I and World War II. This is a financial timetable of the Illuminati kingpins. You were using this back around 1920, and it accurately predicts the market, how all the markets are going to act through the years. And now they have replaced this particular timetable with more accurate ones, but they know exactly what the markets are going to do. I'm going to read this. The cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. Economics is the study of costs. And so I wrote here, this is my little humorous page to add a little levity to something. I thought it was funny that And then I made this cartoon over here on the right-hand side. It's the barber is saying, there are only two kinds of people, those that agree with me and then there are bigots. And the sign says today's topics for discussion are politics and religion. And the guy in the seat is a little bit worried there. So now the hidden present. Visiting with Illuminati kingpins, they bragged to me about how they killed off undesirables in Russia during Yeltsin's rule through poverty, and that they plan to repeat a similar thing like in the United States and Western countries. So here you can see over here, I show you the crude death rate in Russia, and you see up here during Yeltsin's reign what the Illuminati caused by creating poverty in Russia that they thought was so funny. Russia's suffering a lot today, the Russian people, but also the Chinese people. And this is another thing that's hidden from the world, is the suffering of the Chinese people. They have doubled the suicide rate of America. Most of the health budget that the Chinese government spends is on their own government people. Poor farmers, they literally, when they get ill, some of them don't want to be a burden on their family and they can't afford health care, they commit suicide. I actually watched a film of a Chinese man committing suicide, a farmer. It was caught on film. Sad. 40 million couples are infertile, in part because the nation is so polluted, because of this, they're not enforcing any environmental standards. And because of that, there are certain villages that are just called cancer villages where the people are all dying or being abandoned. These are the kind of things that they don't talk about in mainstream press. And then a lot of you may know about the Georgia Guidestones, which were put in place in secrecy. And the Georgia Guidestone says they want to bring humanity's population down to 500 million, which this says in perpetual balance with nature. Now, I asked the Illuminati kingpins I talked to, I asked them if this was true. And they said no, they didn't want it down that low. They wanted to reduce it, but not that low. Well, whatever that number is that they're taking it down to, it's going to involve billions of us common people being genocided. And that's really the biggest thing that I can warn about, is we are looking at genocide people. Just when I talk about genocide, think about like maybe in Bosnia, think about in Europe during World War II when certain races genocided, the suffering of the Polish people, the suffering of the Jewish people. Think of how Turkey treated the Armenians. This is what we're talking about here, people. Now you can see why I feel so blessed to be here to talk with you. Because it says in the Word of God that we need to work while it's day, because the night is coming when we won't be able to work. How much longer will we have freedom of the internet? How much longer will people like me be able to tell these things? There we go. This is another story that doesn't get much attention. it never ceases to amaze me what the elite get away with. You've heard of Area 51 in Nevada. Area 51 is a secret base. But understand this, there are other areas in Nevada that have other numbers, like there's Area 25, so forth. Okay, so Area 51 isn't the only one. And some of these areas were used to test nuclear bombs on land, on the surface. But they also exploded 450 nukes in the air over Nevada. 450 nukes. I don't understand this. If anyone can explain it to me, I will be amazed. Why does any nation need to explode 450 nuclear bombs in the air to test it? And the whole thing about all the radiation that got spread over America has been covered up. As you know, radiation can cause cancer. Well, that's no secret. So there was a study of 320,000 baby teeth in St. Louis, and it showed that babies born after nuclear test had 50 times more radioactive strontium-90 in their teeth. I mean, these are war crimes against the American people. It's outrageous, unbelievable. And in Oregon, where I am at, I have friends that have Geiger counters that are testing the food and the water and so forth. They're monitoring stuff, and we're being lied to about how much radiation is coming from Fukushima. And a friend of mine was tracking the radiation coming out of Fukushima when it initially came, and they did weather modification. Hey, I guess this is one good use of weather modification. They modified the weather because the radiation, he said, that he was tracking was coming towards Oregon and California, and our government blew it down to Mexico, to northern Mexico. I'm sure they kept that secret from Mexico. Okay, speaking of cancer from radiation, there's an incredible number of cancer cures. I know some of you are into alternative medicine. I have a book that's amazing, Miracles from the Vault, and it also has a sequel to it that gives a lot of cancer cures. I've just thrown up a few of these that I've written about. The soursop, which is also known as graviola. But I was disappointed because in Portland I could not find the actual soursop. What they were selling in a few of the Asian stores was actually not the variety that's so powerful to deal with cancer. Concentrated flax hulls legumes, which is sold as SDG. The combination here of Pectosol C and Breastafin, it takes care of breast cancer. The mushroom of gold, which also known as ABM. People, there's no excuse for us to be dying of cancer. Since I have been a small child, I have watched literally both in America and in Europe, our governments and NGOs, they have been raising billions of dollars every year for cancer research. And they are scamming us. They are not going to find a cure for cancer. They're going to spend billions of dollars. Somebody's getting rich off of this whole scam. And yet these cancer cures that have many, many people that have testified of how powerful they are totally ignored. Why are they ignored by Big Pharma? Because they can't patent them and make money off of them. Plus, Big Pharma is not your friend. They are actually, some of these big pharma companies, most of them, maybe all of them actually, that I start to think about it, are Illuminati owned, and they are part and parcel of the genocide agenda. Again, all hidden from us. Yeah, come back. This is the most insidious thing. The human body has a GC macrophage, and that protects a person from cancer. It's in your immune system. And Dr. James Jeffrey Bradstreet, he was a very world-famous physician. And he realized that what they were doing is they were lacing the vaccines that they're giving us with Nagalase to block the GC-MAF. And there were also a number of other doctors in Florida he was in the South, who knew similar information. A lot of alternative doctors in the South that knew about this have been murdered. We now are up to something like 50 alternative doctors have been murdered. Cold-blooded murders. And as I was talking to Alexander on the break, you know, a particular Illuminati kingpin, he was bragging, I guess that's the only word to use it, you know. He was proud that he has an assassination squad, and he told me that they were going to assassinate bankers. Well, they assassinated 50 of them, obvious murders. The police in almost every case I know looked at obvious murders and said, oh, these are suicides, and didn't investigate them. They have done the same thing with these doctors being killed. Obvious murders, they rule them as suicides. It makes me sick. It's disgusting. You know, I guess if we want to look at it another way, you know, what goes around comes around, you know, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap, or, you know, the Indian concept of how you develop negative karma. So I'm sure that some of these people have a lot of negative karma to work off of, if you want to look at it that way. I grew up in Nepal. It was very typical for women on a daily basis to get out and carry heavy loads. They were not eating processed food. When I was Amish for a while after I left the military. I went in another direction. I joined the Old Order Amish, which are horse and buggy. They are totally out of the world system, and they don't eat the world's food. They grow their food. They're self-sufficient. They eat a lot of beets. Beets are very healthy. And in this one community that I lived in, it was normal for a normal man in that community could stand, could jump up and do a flip and land on his feet. Healthy. I look at how sick our society is. I look at how many women in America are just obese. Obese beyond belief. Maybe the most, I hate to say negative things, but this, it ruined my meal. It really did. I was watching this one woman. She was sitting down, and her belly was like a huge sack of potatoes, except much bigger than a sack of potatoes. Her belly went down to the floor, maybe a yard, well, that would be a meter in front of her, and was laid on the floor. It literally laid on the floor. It went to her. As she sat, it literally laid on the floor, and she put her elbows on the table and was scooping in the food in the restaurant like this. it ruined my meal. The Japanese have done a lot of work on water. Some researchers in the United States too. Water is so incredible. There are so many different states of water, so many different ways it changes, the way it changes shape. And I only know a small, the little bit I know is actually absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, we look at water and we think water is water. No, water is not water. Water actually, like David Icke was saying yesterday, it has intelligence. It changes shape. It does all kinds of things. But not only that, but structured water, which you're looking at that is what the body needs. And where will you get structured water? Well, structured water is you can get structured water from juicing, because structured water is the form of water that's in a plant. There's other ways to get structured water. But structured water is incredibly healthy. And so there's, you know, if I could live for maybe another 100 years, and I could have all of the time and money to just write and research like I would like, I would love to write a big long book about all the different forms of water and how it reshapes itself, how it has intelligence, how it can be healthy waters, unhealthy waters. Very incredible. And it's very interesting too, because the Word of God repeatedly associates water with life. The water of life. Those of you who might have Crohn's disease, and I got this for my wife. She has something similar to Crohn's disease. It's a pre-digested protein. When I visited the Anasazi ruins, I found out when I was getting a guided tour that they used to take and make cake out of pre-digested food. One of the things that I have written about, I have exposed Plum Island, which is also known as Fort Terry, Lab 257. It's a German research facility. Talk about war crimes. It's just it's so sad, it's so disgusting, or whatever. It's enough to really make someone indignant that our tax dollars are going to war crimes. But the man who started, the founding father of the lab, was a Nazi SS war criminal who they brought over, in Operation Paperclip. And he began the lab by donating 12 lethal vials of anthrax that he had brought from Nazi Germany, from their supplies. And so they have created a number of new plagues, and every so often they try them out on the American people. Nice people. Oh, by the way, the Illuminati have something, and I don't know the full details. I just only know, I don't know the full details on this, but I'll share a little bit that I do. And they have spread out over certain populations, especially like if there's a community that there are certain communities where all of the people in the neighborhood will be Illuminati, and they have spread out into, through chemtrails or the water or whatever. they have put into these populations an ingredient that if they add something else will kill you. So anytime that they want to destroy these people, they just have to give the second part. You know, it's like epoxy. You have two parts that when you mix them together. And so there are whole sections of areas of the country that are vulnerable to being taken out if they spread the second ingredient. All around the world, we've sadly got war crimes, you know, and this is not mentioned very much. Sir Basil Zaharoff, Illuminati international arms dealer back during World War I and so forth. But there's been many arms dealers. My father, his goal was to help the world become self-sufficient in food, so he had an experimental farm in Libya, and he asked me to come over and help him in Tripoli. Guess who was teaching the terrorists, the Muslim terrorists, the boogeyman that we have to deal with? It was American trainers, CIA or American Special Force trainers. They were the ones that were over in Libya. So we trained them, we gave them the explosives to become terrorists. And then, of course, our government says, oh, Muslim terrorists. Yeah. Same way with what we've got going on in Syria. U.S. government creates the problem, then they come in and pretend to protect it, but run their agenda. So, absolutely mind-boggling. It's what's called, the original name for it was Hegelian dialectics. Problem, or thesis, antithesis, and then from your thesis and antithesis you get your solution. Problem, solution. You have two sides, control conflict, and from that you get the result that you want. So we had a lot of social engineering going on in World War I, World War II. Again, the hidden purposes for these wars. So World War I was Hegelian dialectics, allies, central forces, and out of that, the League of Nations. World War II, allies, Axis forces, United Nations. Out of World War III, the final world government, world state. I love this picture. It shows the people pulling down one statue of somebody that looks like Lenin while they're raising another one to replace it. Another thing that's hidden, it's been outlawed in the United States in our schools, ancient wisdom, which Western civilization was based upon, the Holy Scriptures. Another thing that's been repressed and hidden is this is a subject that you could write books on. If you're interested in the story of the Tucker car, there's a good movie about the Tucker car, and I'm sure you might even be able to watch it on Netflix. There was a man named Tucker, and he designed a car that was 30 years ahead of all the other cars. It had disc brakes, had all kinds of safety features. It had seat belts as a standard item of the car, safety glass, all kinds of improvements. And when he went to make his car, the big three auto manufacturers did all kinds of machinations to prevent him from getting the material to make his car. So then they got the government to step in and say, oh, he never intended to make any cars. It was all just something to defraud people, you know. Well, he wasn't able to make the cars because they prevented him from getting the contracts to buy the material. He barely escaped going to prison. There's a big investigation. He managed to make a few cars in the end, and those are collector's items. Here you see a Tucker car. But they have been suppressing technology. I mean, you know, as you know, Nikola Tesla, I'm sure most of you know of him, and we could be having free energy. And we have a lot of people. I've met a number of inventors. We had some inventors like 3 years ago there in Oregon, and they were so excited because they have basically free energy devices. I watched an inventor in Canada who had actually invented a flying saucer. And unfortunately, what I watched right before my very eyes, and it's sometimes I guess it's frustrating for me because I can see it all where it's going. But a guy that had worked with NASA was still a NASA. Actually, when I think about it, he was still working for NASA, and he approached this Canadian inventor and he said, "Now I have the money to help you with your invention and everything." And I've seen this time and time again. They move in on these inventors, and these inventors are blindsided. And they think, oh, this person's going to help me. No, what happens is the technology gets suppressed. Invention after invention, I've watched it be suppressed. So, if humanity were only spared of this elite that wants to keep us down. There's a lot of inventions coming out, and these are not necessarily secret, but they're revolutionary. Graphene, for instance, you may have heard about it. It's 100 times stronger than the strongest steel, and it's made of it's sort of like a graphite, and it can be levitated easily. Can be used as a transistor. That's a close-up picture of the graphene. There's so many different things. This is just an example of many things. I didn't want to take too long. I wanted to keep it short and sweet. But there's a lot of cutting-edge technology that the world can be genuinely a fantastic place, you know. And one of the things that I've been writing on for many years is their cloning, including cloning of humans. And I've also talked a lot about the doubles that they create. All of the important people that are going to play roles in the Illuminati script, someone like Hillary Clinton, you know. Years ago I was saying, Hillary Clinton has doubles, you know. Well, I really appreciated this thing that happened on 9/11 when she went to the 9/11 ceremony. Do you remember, some of you? Is that she collapsed and they drug her away, threw her into the van and took her to a medical center that they said was her daughter's home. I was very glad to see that whole thing happen, because what happened is when they got her over to her, what they called her daughter's home, they had one of her doubles come out onto the street, and so the news media ran film, and her double comes out there, but it's obviously not Hillary Clinton, because you can look at it closely and, oh, she lost 20, 30 pounds, you know, in an hour, and she's got different ears and different features, you know. So they had her come out to show that Hillary's okay. And I was glad, because now within the awake community, what I had been telling them is mainstream. The awake community is all aware now. Yeah, Hillary Clinton has doubles, because I had been telling them that for years. So in summary, true history of this planet and its life has been destroyed and covered up. Painful events in history also get conveniently forgotten. Knowledge of the crimes of the elite are suppressed and rarely prosecuted. And the release of technology and alternative health methods are being controlled to help the elite, not benefit mankind. Thank you.